I grew up in a Christian home. Both of my parents were pastors and leaders, so faith was something I witnessed and lived through at an early age. And eventually, I accepted Christ for myself in my teenage years. But more than anything, my understanding of faith was shaped by what I saw at home, especially through my mom. She was someone I deeply looked up to because she truly lived out her faith. Loving the Lord wasn't something that she just said, it was who she was. My mom was my confidant, my biggest cheerleader, and my support system through everything. My mom was my rock. And in 2020, everything changed. My mom got COVID, and after that, she suffered multiple strokes. She woke up and became paralyzed from the neck down, and she was bedridden for 3 years. Watching someone you love suffer like that, it changes you, and it made every day feel so heavy. But even in that condition, my mom's heart was still the same. When I visited her in the hospital, the thing that she longed for the most was worship and prayer. And so I would bring my guitar and we would worship together right there in her hospital room. Even when her body was broken, her spirit was still fixed on God. And so for 3 years, my family and I, we hoped and we prayed and we believed that God could heal her. And I held on to that hope. And then in 2023, my mom passed away. But something happened in her final moments that I will never forget. For weeks, she hadn't been responding. And right before her last breath, her eyes suddenly widened and she smiled like she saw something so beautiful. And then she was gone. And in that moment, I knew she was with the Lord. So I kept trying to remind myself that God was still faithful. And I told myself there had to be a reason. I told myself she was in the best place she could be. But even knowing all of that, I struggled. After losing my mom, I fell into a deep depression. And what started as grief slowly turned into something heavier. And eventually I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety. And it started to take over my life. There were days where I couldn't escape the weight of it. The suicidal thoughts started coming more and more frequently to the point that I had to seek professional help. There were moments where I thought I was getting better, but grief would just come crashing back in and pull me right back down again. It felt like a cycle I couldn't get out of. And the question that kept echoing in my heart was simple. Why? Why am I still here? Why did you take my mom away? Why did you allow these things to happen? Why am I stuck here? Why are things not getting better? God, if you have infinite power, wisdom, and knowledge, you could have prevented her death. You allowed me to hope for years only to take her away. Why? So those questions slowly pushed me into a darker place than I'd ever been before.
I was very young when my parents separated. I remember every single birthday wish I had was about them getting back together. I was young and I didn't know a lot, but I knew that your mom and dad is supposed to be together. A family should be whole. I was 7 when my mom left to work abroad, and me and my brother went to live with my dad. And my dads, we never really talked about faith. We never really went to church, but every week or so, I hear a glimpse of God's goodness from my mom. Every video call, my mom would tell me about Jesus, how this guy saved her life. So from a young age, I've heard of who he is, but I never really got to experience him. When my mom took me and my brother to live with her in Canada, I was in my teenage years. At this point of my life, I was thrusted in a world that exposed every brokenness within me. My resentment, my anger, and my emptiness. Because I figured that nothing in my life was ever really permanent. What I thought was independent grow up early with no one to do it with, except for my brother. But we were really getting along. If I'm struggling in a math test, or boy problems, or if someone's picking on me, I got it. I'll deal with it. Everything I've witnessed as a kid, whether it's the house I'm living in, the relationships I care about, or the people I love, people always leave. Things always change. It doesn't wait for you to catch up. Instead of facing these things, I turned to distractions, to vices, to people, to places. I treated everything and everyone with no real importance. I wasn't raised in a household that talks about feelings, so I was struggling alone. I was headed to destruction, but at least I finally felt in control. So I pushed my mom away. I pushed God away. I hated the idea of going to someone else to fix you, because all my life I had to do it alone. Sure, I learned to be independent, but I only really trusted myself. I saw weakness and vulnerability, weakness in trusting anyone but yourself. I was never still. And that's what I expected from everything and everyone. That eventually the good I'm experiencing right now is only for now, but not until I met Jesus.
I spent years identifying as a child of divorce, but today I stand here identifying as a child of God. When I was 4 to 5 years old, my parents separated, and I ended up living with my grandparents. I remember asking my mom one time why, whenever my dad came home from abroad, we didn't live under the same roof like other families. That was the moment I slowly began to understand my parents' situation. Growing up, I barely had any memories with my dad because he was always working abroad. At that time, my mom was busy, living her own life, and often acted like she wasn't really a mother. They were both so focused on their own work and responsibilities that it felt like they forgot about me as their child. I often felt like a forgotten kid, like no one really cared. I didn't get much attention from them or love from them, and I never truly felt loved by my parents. When I was younger, I used to wish so badly that they would get back together. I wanted to experience what other families had. Simple things like celebrating family day, going out and eating together at the same table. There were so many moments I dreamed of sharing with them. As the years passed, my mom eventually started a new family. Not long after that, my dad got married too. It shocked me because I had no idea it was even happening. But the thing that hurt the most was realizing that my parents would never get back together.
When I was 17 or 18 years old, in a time of my life that felt heavy and confusing, I made a decision to run away from home. One day, I packed all my clothes to a suitcase. I left a letter to my parents. I went to a bus terminal. With some savings I had, I bought a ticket to another city and left everything behind. At that time, I worked during the day and I studied during the night. So, my absence didn't raise immediate concern to my parents. But that day, instead of going to school, I walked away from my family. I still remember how I disappointed them. Especially how it broke my mom's heart. And hurt my younger sisters. I wasn't raised in a Christian home. I knew about God, but from the distance. It wasn't personal to me. I didn't believe He had anything to do with me, my decisions, my life. After leaving home, I entered in a dark season. I started smoking and drinking. In the beginning, casually, but slowly it grew a lot. I remember I could smoke more than 20 cigarettes per day. Along with that, I lost all the motivation to move forward. I didn't want to study. I didn't want to work. I didn't care about my future. Internally, I began to believe lies about myself, so like I was good for nothing. The hope felt distance, like someone, like something meant for other people and not for me. I felt far from God, disconnected from others, and unsure who I was becoming.